The grand chamber of Station Kepler-19 floated in the darkness between stars, a massive ring of metal and light where 15 alien civilizations gathered to make decisions that shaped the galaxy. Today was special. Today, humanity would finally be voted in as a full member of the Galactic Council. Ambassador Ji-hoon Park stood at the human delegation desk, his dark suit pressed perfectly, his hands resting calmly on the podium. He had worked 3 long years for this moment. Ji-hoon was not a young man. Gray touched his temples, and lines marked his face from years of patient diplomacy. He had spent countless hours learning alien customs, studying their languages, understanding their fears. The other species had been skeptical at first. Humans were new to space, barely a century beyond their first moon landing. They were loud, emotional, unpredictable. But Ji-hoon had slowly changed minds. He listened more than he spoke. He found common ground where others saw only differences. Behind him sat his team. Nari Kim, his chief aide, reviewed data on her tablet. She was brilliant, sharp as a knife, and fiercely loyal. Around the circular chamber, representatives from across the galaxy waited. The insect-like Chitauri clicked their mandibles in what passed for polite conversation. The crystalline luminar refracted light through their bodies in complex patterns. The tall, gray-skinned Taurians whispered among themselves. And then there were the Vrakish. Reptilian, muscular, with scales that shimmered green and gold under the station lights. They sat in their section with rigid posture, their yellow eyes fixed on Ji-hoon. War Master Theryx led their delegation, a massive creature with scars crossing his snout. The Vrakish had opposed human membership from the beginning. They called humanity dangerous, too aggressive, too quick to anger. The council speaker, a floating jellyfish-like being called Vormis, activated the voting system. Blue light filled the chamber as each species cast their vote. One by one, the results appeared on the main display. The Chitauri voted yes. The Luminar voted yes. The Taurians voted yes. 12 species in favor. Only the Vrakish voted no. But that was expected. Humanity had the votes they needed. Ji-hoon allowed himself a small smile. Nari touched his arm, her eyes bright with tears of joy. This was it. Humanity's place among the stars, secured. He began to stand, to give the acceptance speech he had practiced 100 times. Then the world exploded. The blast tore through the diplomatic wing with a sound like thunder. Metal screamed. Glass shattered. Bodies flew through the air. Ji-hoon felt the heat before the pain, a wave of fire that consumed everything. He tried to move, tried to reach Nari, but his body would not respond. Through the smoke and chaos, he saw War Master Theryx standing untouched, watching. The Vrakish section had not been damaged and all emergency systems activated. Bulkheads slammed down, sealing sections of the station. Alarms wailed. Alien security forces rushed into the chamber, but it was too late. The human delegation area was gone, replaced by twisted metal and flames. Ji-hoon Park died without speaking another word. Nari Kim and 45 other humans died beside him. Within minutes, War Master Theryx stood before the emergency broadcast system. His image filled screens across the galaxy. He spoke slowly, carefully, in perfect galactic common. The attack had been necessary, he said. Humanity was too dangerous to be allowed into the council. They bred too fast. They adapted too quickly. They had a history of violence that made them unsuitable for civilized space. The assassination was not murder. It was preventative defense. It was survival. The other species in the council chamber stood in shock. Some shouted protests. The Chitauri Queen demanded justice. The Luminar called for an investigation. But the Vrakish fleet was the largest in the galaxy. Their weapons were legendary. And Theryx made it clear that any attempt to punish the Vrakish would be seen as an act of war. The protests died down. The investigation was promised, but never started. The galaxy learned a hard truth that day. Power mattered more than justice on Earth. President Daeho Shin received the news in his office in Seoul. He was meeting with Fleet Admiral Tae Jin Choi when the message came through. The holographic display showed the destruction, the bodies, the footage of Ferrex's speech. Daeho was an old soldier before he became president. He had fought in the Korean Reunification War as a young man. He knew what violence looked like. But this was different. This was murder dressed up as politics. Hae-jin stood beside him, her uniform crisp, her face carved from stone. She commanded Earth's defense fleet, such as it was. 50 ships, mostly explorers and light cruisers. Nothing that could threaten the Vrakish. She had lost friends on that station. Good people. She waited for the president's orders. Daeho watched Ferrex's speech 3 times. Then he turned off the display. The room fell silent except for the hum of electronics. Outside the window, Seoul sparkled in the evening light. Millions of people living their lives, unaware that everything had just changed. Recall everyone, Daeho said quietly. Every human in space. Every ship. Every scientist, trader, explorer, diplomat. Everyone. Bring them home. Hae-jin nodded. They will ask why. Tell them the truth, Daeho said. Tell them we are not safe out there. Tell them we are coming home. And then? Hae-jin asked. Daeho looked at her. His eyes were cold, flat, empty of everything except purpose. And then we remind the galaxy what humans do when you push us too far. Within hours, the recall order went out. Across hundreds of worlds, human ships powered up their engines and began the journey home. Human scientists packed their equipment. Human traders closed their shops. Human families said goodbye to alien friends and left. The exodus was silent, orderly, complete. Within 2 weeks, not a single human remained beyond the solar system. The galaxy watched with confusion. Some species thought humanity was running away in fear. The Vrakish propaganda said exactly that. Humans were cowards, they claimed. Too weak to seek justice. Too frightened to stand up for themselves. Let them hide on their little blue world. The galaxy was better off without them, but a few voices spoke differently. The Chitauri Queen sent a private message to Earth, one that was never made public. She warned Daeho to be careful. She said that the Vrakish had made a terrible mistake. The Luminar ran calculations and grew quiet, refusing to comment on human affairs. On Earth, in the deep cold of the Oort cloud, far beyond the orbit of Pluto, lights began to come on. Massive structures that had floated dark and silent for 50 years suddenly blazed with power. 300 warships, each one larger than anything humanity had shown the galaxy, began their wake-up sequence. The Ghost Fleet was rising, and the Vrakish had no idea what was coming for them. Vice Admiral Minho Kong stood on the bridge of the UHN Tae Juchi and watched his fleet come to life. Around him, 300 warships floated in perfect formation, their hulls dark against the starfield. Each ship was enormous, dwarfing the exploration vessels that humanity had shown to the galaxy. Weapons systems activated with quiet hums. Reactor cores reached full power. Crew members moved through corridors they had walked in simulation for decades, but now it was real. Now it mattered. Minho had spent his entire adult life preparing for this moment. He joined the Ghost Fleet program at 25, back when it was just a theory, a secret plan that most people thought was paranoid nonsense. Why build a hidden fleet? Why spend so much money on ships that might never be used? Earth was new to the galaxy. They should focus on exploration, on trade, on making friends. That's what the politicians said, but But the military planners remembered history. They remembered what happened when peaceful people met those who only understood strength. They remembered wars on Earth, genocides, betrayals. They knew that hoping for the best was not the same as preparing for the worst. So they built the Ghost Fleet in secret, far from Earth, far from prying eyes. They recruited volunteers who would spend their lives training in the dark. And they waited. Now the waiting was over. Minho was 53 years old. His hair was completely gray. His face showed lines from decades of stress and responsibility. But his hands were steady as he reviewed the tactical displays. Around the bridge, his command crew worked with practiced efficiency. They had done this 1,000 times in simulation. But everyone knew this was different. This time, people would die. This time, the galaxy would see what humanity had been hiding. On Earth, deep beneath Seoul, President Daeho Shin stood in the command center with Fleet Admiral Haijin Choi. Around them, massive screens showed views from across human space. The last civilian ships were returning home. The orbital stations had been evacuated. Earth's defensive grid was at maximum power. Everything was ready. Intelligence Officer Yuna Lee stood before them, presenting the battle plan. She was young for her rank, only 32, but she had a mind that worked like a computer. She saw patterns others missed. She understood enemy psychology. And she had spent the last 2 weeks designing humanity's response to the Vrakish. 12 targets, Yuna said, highlighting points on a 3-dimensional map of Vrakish space. Military shipyards, weapons platforms, fleet staging areas. No civilian centers. No cities, no farms. This is not revenge. This is a message. Daeho studied the map. What kind of casualties are we looking at? Military only, Yuna replied. Best estimates suggest 20 to 30,000 Vrakish soldiers and spacers. 0 civilian deaths if we execute properly. And if we don't execute properly? Yuna met his eyes. Then we become what they said we are. Haijin spoke up. The crews are ready. Admiral Minho has been preparing them for 30 years. They will not miss. Daeho nodded slowly. He had not slept in 3 days. The weight of what he was about to unleash pressed down on him like a physical thing. Ji-hoon Park had been his friend. They had served together in the military before Ji-hoon became a diplomat. Ji-hoon had believed in peace, in communication, in finding common ground. Now Ji-hoon was dead, murdered while trying to build bridges. And Daeho had to decide what that death meant. No civilians, Daeho said finally. If there is any doubt, any chance of civilian casualties, we abort that target. We are not them. We will never be them. Yuna bowed. Understood, Mr. President. And after? Haijin asked. After we hit them, after we show them what we can do, what then? Daeho smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then we wait. We wait and see if they are smart enough to surrender. If they are not, we show them that this was mercy. On the Taeguchi, Captain Ji Woo-han reviewed her ship's systems one final time. She was 47 years old, tall and lean, with short black hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had commanded this ship for 15 years, knew every system, every weakness, every strength. Her tactical officer, Somin Bae, sat at her station running combat simulations. Her chief engineer, Taeyang Cho, reported from the engine room that all systems were optimal. Ji-woo trusted her crew completely. They had trained together, eaten together, lived together in this floating city of metal and weapons. They knew each other's thoughts, could communicate with a glance. In combat, that unity would be their greatest weapon. Captain, Somin said, we have final target assignments. We are assigned to Vrakish Prime, the main shipyard. Ji-woo nodded. Of course they were. The Taeguchi was the flagship, the most powerful ship in the fleet. They would face the heaviest resistance. That was fine. That was what they trained for. How many enemy ships? Ji Woo asked. 42 capital ships, Soman replied. Approximately 200 smaller vessels. Defensive platforms. Fixed weapons. They outnumber us 3-1. And our advantage? Soman smiled. They have no idea what we can do. That was true. Humanity had been very careful. The ships they showed the galaxy were good, solid, reliable. But the Ghost Fleet was something else entirely. These ships used technology that humanity had developed in secret. Railguns that could fire projectiles at a fraction of light speed. Missiles with artificial intelligence that could outthink enemy countermeasures. Energy weapons that could punch through shields that the Vrakish thought were impenetrable. And above all, tactics. Human tactics, developed from centuries of warfare on Earth, refined through endless simulation and study. The Vrakish thought of war as a test of strength. Big ships, big guns, charge forward and smash the enemy. It worked for them because most species in the galaxy fought the same way. But humans were different. Humans understood deception. They understood flanking maneuvers, false retreats, concentrated fire, psychological warfare. They understood that winning was more important than looking brave. Taiyang's voice came through from engineering. Captain, all weapon systems are online. Reactors at 100%. We are ready. Ji Woo took a deep breath. Across the fleet, 300 captains were doing the same. 300 crews were checking their systems, saying their prayers, thinking about the people they loved. This was it. The moment that would define humanity's place in the galaxy, that Admiral Minho's voice came through on the fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Minho. We did not choose this. We came to the galaxy in peace. We offered friendship. They answered with murder. But we are not here for revenge. We are here for justice. We will strike hard, we will strike fast, and we will strike clean. No civilians. No cities. No mercy for those who wear the uniform, but no cruelty either. Show them what humanity is. Show them what we are when we have no choice. All ships, jump in 30 seconds. The countdown began. Ji Woo watched the numbers fall. Around her, the bridge crew sat in focused silence. She thought about Ambassador Park, about all those who died on Kepler-19. She thought about the families who would never see their loved ones again. And she thought about the Vrakish, about how they had miscalculated so badly. They thought humanity was weak because humanity chose peace. They did not understand that peace was a choice, not a weakness. They did not understand that the most dangerous thing in the universe was someone who tried friendship first. Counter-hit 0.300 ships vanished from the Oort. Cloud, space bent around them as faster than light drives activated. They traveled through dimensions that normal matter could not reach, crossing light years and seconds. And when they emerged in Vrakish space in perfect formation. With weapons hot and shields upgot, the war had begun. The Vrakish defense fleet at their primary shipyard had exactly 4 seconds of warning before the human ships opened fire. Sensors screamed. Alarms wailed. Commanders shouted orders. But 4 seconds was not enough time. 4 seconds was nothing. The human ships materialized in formation, so precise it looked like a computer graphic. The Taeguchi led the assault group, 50 warships arranged in a pattern that confused Vrakish tactical systems. Before the defenders could even charge their weapons, the humans fired. Railgun rounds crossed the distance at relativistic speeds. They were just chunks of metal, but at that velocity, they carried more energy than nuclear weapons. The first salvo struck 6 Vrakish cruisers before their crews even understood they were under attack. Hulls shattered. Atmosphere vented into space. Internal explosions tore the ships apart from the inside. Captain Ji Woo Han watched the tactical display with cold focus. Somin, target the command ship. Full missile spread. Tactical Officer Somin Bey's fingers danced across her controls. Launching now, Captain. 20 missiles erupted from the Taiguxi's tubes. But these were not simple rockets. Each missile had an artificial intelligence core that learned and adapted in real time. The Vrakish activated their countermeasures, electronic warfare systems designed to confuse and destroy incoming weapons. The missiles simply adjusted. They split apart, became dozens of smaller targets. They jinked and weaved, performing maneuvers that would kill a living pilot. They communicated with each other, coordinated their attack. 16 missiles reached the Vrakish command ship. The explosions lit up space like a small sun. Across the battlefield, the pattern repeated. Human ships moved with coordination that the Vrakish could not match. They used tactics that made no sense to an enemy who thought of battle as a straightforward contest of firepower. Human ships would cluster together, making the Vrakish think they had an easy target. Then they would scatter, and the Vrakish fire would hit nothing. Human ships would retreat, and the Vrakish would chase, only to find themselves surrounded. Commander Hannah Park led a strike group targeting the weapons manufacturing station. She was 32 years old, dark-eyed and intense. Her father had been Ambassador Ji-hoon Park. She had joined the Ghost Fleet 8 years ago, long before her father's death. She had wanted to protect humanity. Now she had a different purpose. Her ship, the Gwangju, accelerated toward the massive station. Point defense weapons opened fire, filling space with energy beams and projectiles. Hana's pilot, Lieutenant Bora Co., flew like she was part of the ship itself. The Gwangju twisted and rolled, dodging fire that should have been impossible to avoid. "Target locked," Hannah said. Her voice was steady. Fire. The Gwangju's main gun was something new, something the Vrakish had never seen. It focused a beam of particles, accelerated to near-light speed. The beam lasted only a fraction of a second, but it cut through the station's shields like they were paper. Metal vaporized. The station's main reactor lost containment. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. Hana watched the destruction with no expression on her face. That station had built the device that killed her father. Now it was debris. She felt nothing. No satisfaction, no rage, no sadness. Just a cold certainty that this was right. This was necessary. This was justice. At the main battle near Vrakish Prime, the defenders finally organized a counterattack. 40 Vrakish capital ships formed a battle line and advanced on the human fleet. They fired everything they had. Space filled with weapons fire, a storm of death that would have destroyed any normal fleet. But the human ships were not there. They had jumped away microseconds before the attack arrived, repositioning themselves behind the Vrakish line. Now the Vrakish ships were scattered, disorganized, and the humans were in the perfect position. Captain Ji Woo Han gave the order. All ships concentrated fire on their flagship. Take it down. The Taiguchi and 20 other human ships focused their weapons on a single target, the massive dreadnought that led the Vrakish fleet. The ship's shields were legendary, supposedly strong enough to withstand sustained fire from an entire fleet. The humans proved that wrong in 15 seconds. When the shields failed, the railgun rounds and missiles did their work. The dreadnought broke apart, its back snapped by forces it was never designed to handle. From the command center on Earth, President Tae Ho-shin watched the battle unfold on a dozen screens. Each screen showed a different target. Each showed the same story. Human ships dominating, Vrakish ships dying. The numbers were brutal. Humanity had lost 3 ships. The Vrakish had lost over 60, with dozens more crippled. Intelligence officer Una Lee stood beside him, monitoring civilian casualties. "No civilian deaths reported at any target site," she said. "We are executing cleanly." Daeho nodded. That was the most important thing. They were not monsters. They were not the Vrakish. Admiral Minho Kong's voice came through the command center speakers. He was broadcasting on all frequencies, making sure every species in the galaxy could hear him. His voice was calm, measured, but it carried an edge that made even hardened warriors pause. "This is Vice Admiral Minho Kong of the United Human Navy. We address the Galactic Council and all member species. 16 hours ago, the Vrakish Empire assassinated our ambassador and 47 of our people during a diplomatic session. They claimed this was preventative defense. They claimed we were too dangerous to be allowed among civilized species. We gave them peace. They gave us murder. On a dozen worlds in 100 different languages, beings stopped what they were doing to listen. Let us be clear," Minho continued. "This is not revenge. This is not conquest. This is consequence. We have struck 12 military targets across Vrakish space. We have destroyed their ability to wage war. We have done so without harming a single civilian. We have shown restraint that they did not show us. But make no mistake, this is just the beginning." Across the galaxy, the Chitauri Queen watched with her multifaceted eyes wide. The Luminar ran calculations and came to a conclusion that terrified them. The Taurians whispered prayers to gods they no longer believed in. Every species looked at their own military capabilities and compared them to what humanity had just displayed. The comparisons were not comforting. Back at Vrakish Prime, War Master Theryx watched his fleet die. He had commanded the Vrakish military for 20 years. He had conquered systems, crushed rebellions, and made the Empire the most feared power in the galaxy. Now he was losing, badly. Ships that should have been invincible were torn apart like toys. Tactics that had worked for centuries meant nothing against this enemy. He sent a message to all Vrakish commanders. "Retreat to the home system. All ships, full retreat. We regroup and defend our worlds." But the humans did not chase. That was what confused Theryx most. They could have pursued. They could have destroyed the retreating fleet completely. Instead, they held their positions, their weapons still hot, still ready, but not firing. Captain Ji Woo Han received Admiral Minho's orders. "All ships cease fire. Hold positions. Let them run." Somin looked at her captain with questioning eyes. "Sir, we could end this now." "That is not the mission," Ji Woo replied. "The mission is to show them what we can do, to make them understand the cost of their choice. If we slaughter them while they retreat, we become what they called us. We become the monsters." In the Vrakish capital city, millions of reptilian beings watched the battle reports. They saw their mighty fleet broken. They saw their military stations destroyed. They saw human ships that moved like ghosts and struck like thunder. And they began to ask questions. Questions about War Master Theryx. Questions about the assassination. Questions about whether this war was necessary. On Earth, Admiral Haijin Choi reviewed the casualty reports. 3 ships lost. 417 human crew members dead. But they had crippled the Vrakish military in less than a day. The Ghost Fleet had done exactly what it was designed to do. "Admiral Minho reports all objectives achieved," Haijin told President Daeho. "The Vrakish military capability is reduced by 60%. Their shipyards are destroyed. Their weapons platforms are offline. They cannot threaten anyone for years." Daeho nodded. "And now we wait. We wait and see if they are smart enough to surrender." Across the galaxy, the message was clear. Humanity had held back. For 100 years in space, they had shown only a fraction of their true strength. They had come in peace because they chose peace, not because they were weak. And when forced to fight, they had fought with precision, with honor, with devastating effectiveness. The Vrakish had wanted to see what humanity would become. Now they knew, and the knowledge terrified them. The Ghost Fleet held position in Vrakish space for 3 days. 300 warships floated in formation, weapons powered down but ready, shields at minimum but available. They did not move. They did not threaten. They simply waited. And that waiting was more terrifying than any attack. On the bridge of the Taijukshi, Captain Ji Woo Han reviewed intelligence reports. The Vrakish had pulled their remaining military forces back to their home system. They were building defensive positions around their major population centers. They were preparing for a siege, for a long battle, for humanity to come and finish what they started. But humanity did not come. They do not understand, Tactical Officer Somin Bey said, studying the enemy movements. They think we will attack their civilians. Ji Woo nodded. They would, in our position. So they assume we will too. They do not understand that we are different. On the 4th day after the battle, President Daeho Shin made a broadcast. Not to humanity, not to Earth, to the Galactic Council. His message bypassed the Vrakish completely, as if they no longer mattered enough to address directly. The holographic transmission showed Daeho sitting at a simple desk. No flags, no symbols of power, just a man speaking plainly. His words were translated into every galactic language simultaneously. Members of the Galactic Council, Daeho began, humanity came to you in peace. We offered friendship and cooperation. The Vrakish answered with murder. They killed Ambassador Ji-hoon Park and 47 others while they sat at the negotiating table. And then they told you it was justified. They told you we were too dangerous to exist among civilized species. Daeho paused. His eyes were hard. We have shown you what dangerous really means. We have destroyed the Vrakish military capability. We did so in less than 24 hours. We did so without harming a single civilian. We held back for 100 years because we chose peace. They mistook that choice for weakness. Now they know the truth. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched. The Chitauri Queen sat perfectly still, her antennae trembling. The Luminar refracted light in patterns of deep concern. The Taurians bowed their heads. We make this offer once, Daeho continued. The Vrakish leadership will surrender themselves to face justice. They will stand trial for the murder of our people. If they do this, we will cease all military operations. If they do not, we will finish what they started. And we will not hold back again. The choice is theirs. They have 72 hours. The transmission ended. The galaxy held its breath. On the Vrakish homeworld, in the capital city of Thraxia, War Master Tharix called an emergency council. The military commanders and political leaders gathered in the Great Hall, a vast chamber with walls carved from red stone. Usually this room echoed with confident voices, with plans for expansion and conquest. Today it was silent except for fearful whispers. Surrender is not an option, Tharix declared. We are Vrakish. We do not bow to lesser species. The humans are bluffing. They will not attack our worlds. They do not have the stomach for true war. But not everyone agreed. A younger commander named Krell stood up. He was smaller than Tharix, younger, with bright green scales unmarked by battle scars. But he had fought in the recent battle. He had seen what the human ships could do. War Master, Krell said carefully, I was at Vrakish Prime. I saw our fleet destroyed. Those ships, those weapons, they are beyond anything we have. And they held back. They could have killed us all while we retreated. They did not. That is not weakness. That is control. It is cowardice, Therex snarled. They are afraid to face us in real combat. They destroyed 60 ships in one day, Krell replied. They crippled our military in hours. That is not fear. That is mercy. And if we refuse this offer, they will show us what happens when mercy ends. The council chamber erupted in arguments. Some sided with Therex, believing that Vrakish pride demanded resistance to the end. Others sided with Krell, seeing the reality of their situation. The Vrakish Empire had ruled through strength. Now they faced an enemy stronger than them. Pride was expensive when you were about to lose everything. On Earth, Intelligence Officer Yuna Lee monitored Vrakish communications. She sat in a dark room filled with screens, headphones on, listening to encrypted chatter that humanity's computers had already broken. She heard the arguments, the fear, the desperation. They are fracturing, she reported to President Deho. The military is divided. Younger officers want to accept the terms. The old guard wants to fight to the end. And the civilians? Deho asked. Terrified, Yuna said. They have seen what we did to their military. They are protesting in the streets, demanding that their leaders surrender. There have been riots in 3 major cities. Admiral Haijin Choi looked at the timeline. 48 hours remain. If Therex does not surrender, what then? Deho was quiet for a long moment. Then we send a demonstration. One target. One military command center, far from any civilian population. We destroy it so completely that there is no doubt about what we can do. And then we give them one more chance. Meanwhile, Commander Hana Park sat in her quarters aboard the Gwangju. On her desk was a picture of her father, Ambassador Ji-hoon Park, taken at her graduation from the Naval Academy. He had been so proud that day. He had never wanted her to join the military. He believed in peace, in words instead of weapons. But he had supported her choice because he believed people should follow their own path. Now he was dead, and she had avenged him. But the revenge felt hollow. She had thought destroying the station that built the weapon would bring satisfaction. It had not. Her father was still gone, and she was still here, surrounded by death and war. A knock at her door. Lieutenant Bora SEO entered. Commander, Admiral Mino is calling all senior officers to conference. Something is happening. They gathered in the fleet communication room. Admiral Minho's face appeared on the main screen, transmitted from the Taijupshi. His expression was neutral, but his eyes showed something that might have been hope. We have received a transmission from Vrakish, Minho said. Not from War Master Therex. From a group calling themselves the Reform Command. They are military officers, mid-level commanders, led by someone named Krell. They have arrested Therex and his senior staff. They are offering surrender. The room erupted in surprised voices. Hannah felt her heart skip. Could it really be over? They want guarantees, Minho continued. They want assurance that civilians will not be harmed. They want the trial to be fair, overseen by the Galactic Council, not just humans. And they want help rebuilding their military command structure. They say their military was corrupt, focused only on conquest. They want to change that. Captain Ji Wuhan spoke up. Admiral, is this legitimate? Could it be a trap? Intelligence confirms, Minho replied. We have intercepted communications. Therex is in custody. There was fighting in the capital, but it is over. The Reform Command controls the military. President Deho Shin appeared on another screen. I have spoken with Krell directly. He seems genuine. Young, idealistic, horrified by what Therex did. But we will verify everything. We will proceed carefully. What are your orders, Mr. President? Minho asked. Accept the surrender, Deo said. Send a delegation to receive custody of Therix and his staff. But keep the fleet on alert. Trust, but verify. And begin discussions with this reform command. If they truly want to change, we will help them. If this is deception, we will finish what we started. Over the next week, the transfer took place. War Master Therix and 17 of his top commanders were handed over to human custody. They were transported to Earth to The Hague, where an international court had been established. But this time, it was not just humans judging. Representatives from the Chitauri, the Luminar, the Taurians, and 6 other species sat as observers and advisors. The evidence was overwhelming. Video footage of the assassination. Communication records showing Therix ordering the attack. Testimony from Vrakish officers who had opposed the plan but were overruled. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Therix showed no remorse. He claimed he had acted for the good of the galaxy, that humanity needed to be stopped before they became too powerful. The verdict was unanimous. Guilty of mass murder, of crimes against sentient beings, of violating every law of civilized space. The sentence was life imprisonment on a human prison colony in a remote star system. Not death, because humanity did not execute prisoners, but isolation, forever separated from the empire he had tried to protect through murder. On the day of sentencing, diplomatic officer Seojun Oh stood to give testimony. He had survived the assassination only because he had left the chamber moments before to take an emergency call. He had watched his friends die through a security camera feed, helpless to save them. Ambassador Park believed in peace, Seojun said, his voice steady despite the tears on his face. He believed that different species could find common ground. He died trying to build bridges, and his death almost destroyed that dream. But today, we prove him right. Today, humans and aliens sit together to deliver justice. Today, we choose law over vengeance. Ambassador Park would be proud. In the audience, Hannah Park sat beside her mother. They held hands and cried together, not from sadness, but from something more complex. Relief, closure, hope that something good might come from tragedy. 6 months after the trial, Ambassador Yoonji Choi stood in the rebuilt Galactic Council chamber on Station Kepler 19. The station had been repaired, the blast damage removed, the scars covered with new metal. But everyone who entered this room felt the ghosts. 48 people had died here. Their names were engraved on a memorial wall just outside the chamber, written in every galactic language. Yoonji was 34 years old, young for an ambassador. She had been Ji-hoon Park's protégé, his student in the diplomatic corps. She had learned everything from him. How to listen, how to find common ground, how to be patient when others were angry. And now she carried his legacy forward, standing at the same podium where he had stood, representing humanity to the stars. But the galaxy had changed. The human delegation area was still in the same location, but now the UHNS Taiju she floated just outside the station, clearly visible through the massive windows. Captain Ji Woo Han and her crew served as the embassy guard, a reminder that humanity came in peace but carried a sword within reach. President Daeho Shin had been clear. The Ghost Fleet would not return to the shadows. The 300 warships now patrolled human space openly, their existence no longer secret. Some species found this threatening. Others found it reassuring. Everyone found it impossible to ignore Dot, but humanity also launched something else. A Park initiative, named for the fallen ambassador. It was a massive program of humanitarian aid, technological sharing, and cultural exchange. Human doctors traveled to alien worlds to share medical knowledge. Human engineers helped build infrastructure on developing planets. Human teachers established schools where species could learn from each other. "We showed you our strength," President Dao had said when announcing the program. "Now we show you our values. We are not conquerors. We are builders. We came to the stars to make friends, and that mission has not changed." In the council chamber, Yunji placed a small holographic projector on her desk. The image of Ji-hoon Park appeared, frozen in a moment from his last speech, his face calm and hopeful. She left it there, visible to everyone, a reminder of what they were building and what it cost. The Galactic Council had restructured after the crisis. Humanity now held a permanent seat, not granted through politics, but acknowledged through undeniable reality. Ambassador Yunji had proposed new laws in her first session. The assassination of diplomats was now a galactic war crime, punishable by unified military action. The use of violence during diplomatic proceedings carried mandatory sanctions. Species that harbored those who committed such crimes would face isolation. Every species voted yes. Even the Vrakish representative, appointed by the new Reform Command, voted in favor. The council meetings were different now. Before, the Vrakish had dominated through intimidation. Other species had stayed quiet, afraid to draw their anger. Now species spoke more freely. The Chitauri Queen proposed environmental protection laws. The Luminar suggested technological cooperation programs. The Taurians advocated for religious freedom protections. Change came slowly, but it came. And humanity sat at the table, no longer the newcomers seeking acceptance, but equals who had earned their place through blood and restraint. On the Taejugi, Captain Ji Woo Han walked through the corridors of her ship, checking on her crew. They had been on station duty for 4 months, a quiet assignment after the intensity of combat. Some crew members struggled with the transition. Combat gave you purpose, clarity, a clear enemy, and a clear mission. Peace was harder. Peace meant waiting, watching, maintaining readiness for a fight you hoped would never come. Tactical Officer Somin Bey had requested a transfer to diplomatic security training. She wanted to protect the people trying to prevent the next war. Chief Engineer Taiyang Cho had started teaching engineering classes to young aliens who came to the station, sharing human technology in exchange for alien perspectives. "We fought so we could have this," Ji Woo told her crew at their monthly meeting. "We fought so that people like Ambassador Yunji could do their work without fear. That is our victory. Not the battle we won, but the peace we protect." On the Vrakish homeworld, Commander Krell worked to rebuild his species' military. But the new Vrakish military was different. Smaller, focused on defense rather than conquest, with strict civilian oversight. They studied human tactics, not to copy them, but to understand them. They studied human restraint, trying to learn that lesson Therics had never understood. Krell had requested a meeting with humanity's military command. To his surprise, Admiral Minho Kong agreed. They met on a neutral station, 2 warriors who had been enemies, now trying to build something different. "Why did you spare us?" Krell asked. "When we retreated, you could have destroyed our fleet completely. Why did you let us go?" Minho considered the question. "Because our goal was not to destroy you. It was to stop you. There is a difference. We wanted justice, not genocide. We wanted you to change, not to disappear. Many humans died in the battle," Krell said. "Do you not want revenge?" 417, Minho replied quietly. "I know every name. I wrote letters to every family. And yes, part of me wants revenge. But I am a soldier, not an executioner. My job is to protect humanity, not to satisfy my anger." They talked for 3 hours. Krell asked questions about human military philosophy, about how humanity balanced strength with mercy. Minho asked about Vrakish culture, trying to understand how a species built on warrior pride could change. They did not become friends. But they built understanding, and sometimes that was more important. Admiral Haijin Choi retired 6 months after the war ended. She had served for 35 years, commanded fleets, defended Earth, and helped win a war without becoming a monster. At her retirement ceremony, President Daho Shin presented her with humanity's highest honor. "You kept us safe," Daho said. "You prepared us for a threat we hoped would never come. And when it came, you responded with precision and honor. You made us proud to be human." Haijin smiled. "I just did my job, Mr. President. The real heroes are the ones trying to make sure we never have to fight again." Across human space, life slowly returned to normal. Ships resumed trade routes. Scientists went back to their research. Families returned to alien worlds, cautiously at first, but then with growing confidence. The galaxy was not safe, not yet, but it was safer. And that was progress. Commander Hana Park visited the memorial station near Kepler 19. It was a small structure, built from the debris of the attack, transformed into something beautiful. The names of the dead were written in light, floating in the void. Hannah found her father's name: Ji-hoon Park, Ambassador, Peacemaker, Father. "We did it, Dad," she whispered. "We got justice. But more than that, we proved you were right. Peace is possible. Even after everything, even after they killed you, peace is still possible." The galaxy had learned a hard lesson. Humanity valued peace, but would respond to violence with overwhelming force. Not revenge, but consequence. Not conquest, but justice. They had shown their teeth, and the galaxy had recoiled. But they had also shown their values, and the galaxy had begun to respect them. 2 years after the assassination, the Galactic Council held a memorial ceremony. Every species sent representatives. They gathered in the council chamber where Ji-hoon Park had died. Ambassador Yoonji Choi spoke, her voice carrying to 1 billion worlds. Ambassador Park's last words before the attack were these: "Peace is not weakness, and strength is not cruelty." Those words guide us now. We are strong enough to defend ourselves. We are wise enough to seek cooperation. We are human enough to hope for something better than endless war. The ceremony ended with a moment of silence. Across the galaxy, billions of beings stopped what they were doing. For 1 minute, the galaxy was quiet, remembering, reflecting, hoping. In the void between stars, the ghost fleet maintained its vigil. 300 ships, ready but idle, weapons cold but available. They represented humanity's promise and its warning. We came in peace. We still come in peace. But never mistake our kindness for weakness. Never mistake our patience for fear. The Vrakish had learned that lesson in blood and fire. The rest of the galaxy learned it by watching. And humanity proved something that no one had expected. The most dangerous species in the galaxy was not the one that struck first. It was the one that tried friendship first, but kept a sword within reach. Ambassador Yoonji Choi returned to her desk after the ceremony. She touched the hologram of Ji-hoon Park, her mentor, her teacher, the man who believed peace was possible, even when it seemed impossible. She picked up her schedule for the next week: trade negotiations with the Chitauri, cultural exchange programs with the Luminar, medical cooperation with the Taurians. The work of peace, slow and difficult, but infinitely better than war. Outside her window, the Taiji floated in the darkness, its weapons silent, its crew alert. Its presence a reminder that humanity had learned to balance the diplomat and the warrior. They had learned that the greatest strength was knowing when not to use strength. They had learned that peace was not the absence of power, but the choice to use power wisely. And the galaxy, slowly, painfully, was learning that lesson too. Not because humanity was perfect, not because they had all the answers, but because they had shown a different path. They had shown that strength and compassion could exist together, that justice and mercy were not opposites, that the future did not have to be written in blood. Humanity had come to the stars hoping for friendship. They had received murder, and in their response, they had shown the galaxy what they truly were. Not conquerors, not victims, but survivors who refused to become what their enemies expected. People who would fight when necessary, but never forget why peace was worth fighting for. The galaxy would never forget the day humanity revealed its true strength. But more importantly, it would never forget the restraint that came with that strength. The choice to wound but not kill, to defeat but not destroy, to seek justice but not revenge. That was humanity's gift to the stars. Not weapons or technology or tactics, but the simple, radical idea that peace was a choice, not a weakness, and that the bravest thing any species could do was choose peace, again and again, even when it would be so much easier to choose war. The stars turned. The galaxy lived, and humanity stood watch, guardians who had never wanted the role, but would fulfill it with honor. They had killed the ambassador. Humanity's retaliation had shaken the galaxy. But what came after the retaliation mattered more. What came after was hope.